wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening and welcome everyone. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, my name is Alma Mubarak. I'll be your moderator for this evening, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our third screening series in partnership with the Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. We hope you all enjoyed tonight's film. Botoula happens to be one of my personal favorite imagination docs because it conveys messages on important matters like female empowerment, which is another great example of the gender equality that we pride ourselves on here in the UAE. Now, this leads us on to this evening's discussions. Tonight's theme will be focused on female empowerment and the important role that women play in building our societies, be it politics, social issues, academics, art, or science. There's no doubt that the women of the UAE have been making their mark in every field and are instrumental in making the UAE a place of equality and inclusion. Our leadership have demonstrated to the world how rapid progress can be achieved in advancing female empowerment. In 2015, the government appointed the UAE's first female speaker and Emirati woman, being allocated the position in the UN. And these are amongst the thousands of women who are making their mark in today's world. Since then, the UAE was ranked the #1 region in providing females with leadership positions. And this study was conducted in over 132 countries. Now we're joined this evening with several distinguished guests for what will surely be an enjoyable discussion. I'd like to welcome Her Excellency Hanan Aleeli, Ambassador of the UAE to the Republic of Latvia, and Mr. Mansour Dhaheri, Board Member of the UAE Jiu-Jitsu Federation. And I'm also very pleased to say that tonight things will be going a little bit differently, as we will be introducing 2 additional special guests who will be joining us later on this evening. And I'd like to also remind everyone that if you have any questions for either of our panelists, please utilize our chat box function and we'll do our best to address all of your comments. Your Excellency Hanan, Mr. Mansour, welcome and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Alma.
Thank you, Alma.
So tonight, I'd like to start off this session with a question for you, Mr. Mansour. Having just watched the documentary, there's a great piece in there that tells the story of Jiu-Jitsu in the UAE. Can you share with us a little bit more about why the Federation wanted to create a film in the first place?
Thank you, Alma. So I'll start with the UAE Jiu-Jitsu Federation. It is the governing body for this specific sport. And it is, part of its commitment is to promote this sport across the country and to create a supportive environment in order for the athletes to thrive and achieve their goals. Now, just to share a bit of a vision of our organization, our vision is very simple: is to be a league organization and a star of Jiu-Jitsu or a symbol of Jiu-Jitsu, both domestically and internationally. That's the intent, but the main reason, and I'm comfortable to share this, is back at that time, we have faced few challenges, especially with the parents, where they might think that the sport preaches violence, where on the other hand, the Jiu-Jitsu actually sits on the other side of the spectrum, and it helps you to be more humble, more confident, and so on and so forth. But again, showing that documentary, and as you guys have seen, it was beautifully knitting between the young athletes, their parents, and the community together. And as a result, you've seen a lot of the athletes end up having a better self-confident situation within themselves. They also very keen in developing themselves through the Jiu-Jitsu, and we felt a sense of professionalism and a sense of responsibility. And also they have cultivated a sense of sportsmanship, i.e. Respecting themselves and respecting their opponent. So again, the bottom line was honestly to inspire many of these young athletes, and especially the parents. Thank you.
Well, I think you've also inspired the audience and everyone else. Thank you, Mansour.
I hope so, yeah.
Your Excellency, we're very keen to learn how films like Botoula help in your public diplomacy efforts as an ambassador in places like Latvia, who may have a minimal knowledge of the UAE.
Thank you, Alma. First of all, I would like to thank you for giving me the chance to be with you today. And I would like to highlight that this documentary is the first ever Emirati movie that has been screened in Latvia, which gives us the privilege to experience how Latvian society will react to Emirati production. During the first 4 years since the opening of UAE Embassy in Riga, I have noticed that Latvian society finds Emirati culture, tradition is very fascinating to them, which increased the knowledge about UAE. And the embassy has spared no effort to raise this awareness during embassy social activities, including international events, festivals, National Day celebration. In my opinion, cultural cooperation between countries is the foundation for successful relations. Films serve as one of the most influential and accessible tools of the public diplomacy, and it's had a unique ability to affect a big number of people, especially nowadays. Botoula movie will definitely help to enlighten about the sport of Jiu-Jitsu in UAE.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It's incredible to hear that Botoula was, in fact, the first Emirati film to be screened in Latvia. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, Mansour, we come to learn that there are close ties between the UAE and Brazil through the sport. In what other ways would you say that Jiu-Jitsu has helped with sports diplomacy for the UAE?
So, well, I believe many of the sports in general, they tend to build bridges between different nations. And definitely Jiu-Jitsu is one of these sports. And just to give a bit of history, and just to understand the journey of Jiu-Jitsu, many have said and believe that the birthplace of Jiu-Jitsu was India, and it made its way to the Far East, China and Japan. And Jiu-Jitsu as a sport sat very beautifully among, a sweet bundle of different martial arts, i.e. karate, judo, and aikido, and so on. And they shared similar, values. And in the early 1900s, the sport creeps down toward Brazil, and the Gracie family in Brazil did an amazing job in molding this sport to become more of a day-to-day. And hence that's why it's called BJJ, which is the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that we know today. Now, what we believe Abu Dhabi has steadily becoming the capital or a global capital of Jiu-Jitsu by organizing a world class events, by attaining a unity of athletes across the globe, and having great coaches, and mainly from Brazil, on board. And just to give a bit of meat or statistics to what I'm saying, we have started in 2009 with only 3 local or domestic tournaments. Today, we're happy to say that we have 19 domestic tournaments. From the international front, we have started with 5 tournaments back in 2009. And today, we have 67 tournaments internationally, which touches 60 cities. And I think that is diplomacy by itself. And we're very proud and happy of that. So again, I think sports in general tend to bring us together. That's the diplomacy.
Absolutely, very well said. And on the topic of diplomacy and building bridges, we know that Latvia has indeed actually have had a Jiu-Jitsu team participate in previous UAE championships. Your Excellency, how has sports diplomacy helped to promote the UAE in Latvia?
Yeah, indeed. Latvian team's participation in UAE Jiu-Jitsu Championship was very successful. I had the pleasure to meet young Latvian Jiu-Jitsu athletes who proudly represent their country on the highest platform around the world. I also delivered a speech on the opening of the first Baltic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Championship in Latvia, which was very uplifting due to the fact that Jiu-Jitsu is becoming a national sport in UAE. And the embassy also have been participated in annual marathon in Riga, and we had the opportunity to cheer the contestants and offer UAE hospitality. And especially heartwarming for me was the participation of Latvian athletes at the 10th Special Olympic World Games, which were hosted in Abu Dhabi in March 2019. I personally welcomed Latvian Olympic team when they arrived back in Latvia. I wanted to get their feedback about their experience, which was positive, fruitful, and they get 21 medals. I have one small secret I would like to share with you. Maybe few of people, they know it about me. In my time, I used to play karate, which was very famous at my time, and I got the brown belt. But after that, the life took me, and the political life took me, and I couldn't complete in this game. So I have a very touch with these kind of games, and I think if I go back, I would join Jiu-Jitsu very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's in fact something we didn't know about you. So thank you, Your Excellency. So Mansour, equality and female empowerment is often misunderstood and misrepresented in the region. Do you think Botoula and Jiu-Jitsu itself are effective at showing the existing equality among genders in the UAE?
Right. I mean, I think in a nutshell, I mean, I believe Botoula had described this very beautifully in different scenes. But in a nutshell, the equality is one of Jiu-Jitsu's central traits. And we believe as a federation, and we're very sure, in fact, that we have played a crucial role in empowering female athletes and providing them with the right platform to express themselves. And it's very important for us to allow them to explore their potential. Again, maybe if I can give a little bit more numbers, if I may. So when we started in 2009, the number of female students were 1,000 who participated in Jiu-Jitsu, where the boys were 11,000. So you can see the ratio and the proportionality, the proportionality. I can't say it. Yes, thank you. Okay, so you can see the difference. But in 2019, the surprise is we have 30,000 female participants, and we have 50,000 boys participating. So that's just about 40%, which shows a huge jump, giving the chance for these young athletes who we are hoping that such a sport is going to mold them to a better individuals in the future. And that's what I have to say on this side.
Thank you. Inshallah, we really hope to see these numbers grow each year. Your Excellency, the empowerment of women is one of the key pillars of the UAE's national agenda. Can you share with us perhaps some of the challenges and highlights that you may have experienced in sharing the story of the UAE's achievements in this space?
The same understanding in UAE and Latvia on women empowerment aspects has always helped me when highlighting UAE achievement in this field. It's worth to recalling that unlike many countries, Latvia has already had a female president and prime minister, and the current female speaker of the parliament has been re-elected for the second time. Currently, representative of women in the government of Latvia is relatively high. There is 3 female ministers out of 14. In Latvia, representation of female in decision-making has risen over past year. 31 female out of 100 deputies have been elected in the parliament, which is above the EU average. And in UAE, a country that only have 50-year-old, we are very proud of our achievement in women empowerment. For example, the women make up 20% of the Emirati diplomatic corps. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Alma, is the first female legislative leader in the Arab world. Women make over 70% of all university graduates, and our region first military college for women was launched in UAE. These are a few examples from a long list, a list that UAE is committed to maintaining and expanding through legislation, opportunities, and education.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And thank you, Mr. Mansour. Just before we move on to the audience's questions, I've mentioned this earlier on in the discussion, but we'll be welcoming 2 very special guests, our very own stars of the documentary, Eliazia and Reem, who will be joining us this evening to share their Jiu-Jitsu experience and to update us on what they've been up to since filming ended. Welcome, Eliazia. And welcome, Reem. It's a pleasure having you this evening. Reem, you no longer actively practice Jiu-Jitsu, but can you tell us how being a fighter growing up impacted you as an adult and what you may have learned through practicing Jiu-Jitsu?
First of all, I want to thank everyone to give me a chance to talk. And I am so proud of myself to be part of this session. I would to say, if there is no one behind you to give you a power to succeed in anything, you will, of course, you will be weak. Always let a person on your side, person who's active, who's give you like power, like your power, to be a good one, not just from Jiu-Jitsu, out of Jiu-Jitsu in your life. When since when I played Jiu-Jitsu, I feel so comfortable, and I met with kind people, like everyone, and I share this first time.
Thank you. I think you know, what you just mentioned are all very important mantras and life lessons that we should live by. Thank you so much. And my final question for both of you ladies is, do you have any advice for people who may be looking into practicing Jiu-Jitsu? Reem, what would your advice be?
Can you repeat, Amel?
Sure. So my question is, for people that might be interested in practicing Jiu-Jitsu, and for those people, what would your advice be?
My advice, people who like to enjoy this game, I would say many things, but I will cut it. And then I will say, be strong. Self-defense, it's a big part of your life. Also, you have to respect people from kids until adults and older. My suggestion is keep going. Don't give up. I saw my videos and I start to cry because my feeling is so not comfortable. And then when I saw myself, like each competition that I lose on it, I feel what's my mistake. Not I saw my weakness. No, I see what I have to do. What's next step? What I should to do in my future to never get in this solution, in this position. You have to be strong and never say the man strong than women. We are now the same. Now we are in 2020. We are all the same category. And thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies. So just before we conclude tonight's session, we have just about time to answer a couple of the audience's questions. And I'm just looking at the questions that we've received.
I can jump in if you don't mind, Alma.
Sure.
I saw one of the questions was asking about the trajectory towards the Olympics. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think any sports, any federation that is in charge of any certain sport, whether it's an individual sport or a team sport, they would love to see that specific sport in that arena, in that footprint of the Olympics. Now, reaching there, there's a lot of steps and a lot of processes that happens. And yes, diplomacy plays a big role in that. In fact, just to give a bit of credit for our federation, we had an amazing discussions with the Japanese earlier, 2 years back, 2017, when we were thinking if the Jiu-Jitsu could be a part of they call it a demo or a demonstration. They usually put that in the openings or at the closings of the Olympics. The negotiations went well to some point, and then they've decided not. They had different sports to look at, and we thought Jiu-Jitsu would have been a beautiful narrative for their Olympics because it is part of their, a set of martial arts. But anyways, hopefully 2024 could be our next stop. And hopefully we, as the UAE Jiu-Jitsu Federation and as, the custodian of this specific sport in this country, to push for this sport to reach the Olympics, inshallah.
Inshallah. There's a question for Your Excellency, which was asked by Danielle, and she would like to know if you see a closer partnership in the field of sports and sporting events between Latvia and the United Arab Emirates. Your Excellency, sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I came back. Yes, of course, and Jiu-Jitsu is one of them, and the other is what Latvian proud of here is the hockey. So these two games as a start, not as exclusive, I think we have a big potential, especially that the Latvian Jiu-Jitsu team already had participated in UAE. I wish to get the support, of course, and whatever, any support from the Latvian side, they are willing to go for it, actually.
Thank you. And we have a question from Jawahir, which is how many Emirati athletes, female athletes, do we have in 2020 across the UAE? So I'm not sure if Mansour, you'd be able to answer that.
Did she say athletes?
Yes, female athletes.
Female athletes. So I do have that number, but it's not in front of me. But what I've mentioned is the 30,000 as of today, the number of the students. Let's say the younger ones. But when it comes to everyone else, I don't have that number. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you for that. We'll get back to Jawahir inshallah after this session. I think because I'm just cautious of that we've went over the time. So I think this will conclude the end of tonight's session and the end of this evening's Art of Culture and Diplomacy session. So we hope that you've all enjoyed tonight's great discussion.
I'm sorry, Alma, to stop you before we go. There's one question in the last. I can see that one of our participants asked, and I would love to very short answer.
Sure.
Somebody is asking how the soft power can combat the wrong perception. Yes, there was a stereotype, and these kind of movies that show the successful stories about UAE, yes, it is broke the stereotype, and I wish to see more movies that been showing here and have much of the audience. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for...
No, absolutely. Thank you, Your Excellency. I can go on all evening, but I'm just cautious of everyone's time, so thank you. So as I was just saying, that this marks the end of this evening's Art of Culture Diplomacy session. We hope you all enjoyed tonight's session, and I'd like to thank you all for joining. I'd like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation for their continued support, the UAE Jiu-Jitsu Federation for enabling us to show this documentary tonight, and for their support, and for all of our wonderful participants for participating tonight. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Your Excellency. Mansour.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Aleeli and Dream, thank you so much.
Thank you.